Hi again for the last time today. So now I want to help you through investment ratios. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to share my screen with a question, and I'm going to use it to explain more things than actually are on the page. So just let me set up and find my question for you. Won't be long now. Here we are. So this time we're going to be looking at investment ratios, and there are 5 of them. There's earnings per share, price earnings, dividend payout ratio, dividend yield, and price to book value. So I'm going to use this question to explain and show you how to work out 4 of them. Obviously, we can't have a question dealing with all of them. This is just going to be a selected few. So what is different in this one is, you see over here, I'm giving you information for how many businesses? 2. So there's Pink Limited as well as Purple Limited. Because as I mentioned earlier on today, you may be asked to make a recommendation to a client as to which of the companies would be the better one to invest in. So we would need to do calculations and then a comparison and reach a decision. And you would clearly need to state which is the preferred option based on your calculations, and you would need to give supporting evidence. In other words, just a simple explanation. So here we have some information for the 2 companies. And I've asked you here to calculate 3. And what I suggest is, if you have more than one company, have a column for each company. If you have more than 1 year, then have a column for each year. It just makes it much easier to set it out, and it stops repetition of writing the same things over and over. So also read your question carefully and follow the instruction. So let's look here at the dividend yield. So the dividend yield, I've asked for both companies. Dividend payout ratio, only for one, Pink. Price earnings, only for one, the other one. So make sure that you don't make a silly mistake in your test, should you see something like this. So let's look first of all at the dividend yield. Well, any yield is a return to an investor. So how do you make a return in the case of having a share? Okay. You pay the price of the share. The company gives you back the dividend. So it's basically the dividend as a percentage of the share price. That is your dividend yield. So let's have a look and see, do we have all the information? Sometimes it's not readily available. We're going to have to do a calculation first. That's why I like this question that I put together, because we actually do more ratios than are asked on the page. So do we have the dividend for both of the companies? Yes. 5 Rand for Pink and 3 Rand for Purple. Do we have the current price of the share? Luckily we do. First ratio is easy. 30 Rand and 20 Rand. So all we're going to do is we're going to find 5 Rand as a percentage of 30 and 3 Rand as a percentage of 20. That's all there is to dividend yield. So let me show you how would be quite a nice way to set it out. As we said, a column for each of the companies. And then you're only going to write down the formula once on this side over here. So you write your formula there, and then you're going to substitute the correct values in the column. So we do this. And for Pink, we see it's 16.67%. And for Purple, the return is 15%. Nice, easy one. Then let's look at number 2. First of all, what does it actually mean? As I mentioned before, a company has profit as a result of trading. Two things can be done with the profit. It can either be paid out as a dividend, or it can be retained as retained earnings. So this is what this ratio is doing. It's looking to see, out of the profit that's available to be paid out, how much is paid out, which also tells us how much was not paid out. So this ratio actually tells us two things: the portion of profit distributed to dividends and the portion held as retained earnings. So it says two things. So what do we need to do? We need the formula, which is as follows. It's going to be the dividend. And remember that the dividend is given on a per share basis. So now when we're coming to do the earnings available, it must be not in total, but on a per share basis as well. And then we will convert that into a percentage. So we do have the dividend, but we don't have earnings per share. So I'm now going to show you how to work that out. And remember, only for pink. Okay. So the formula for earnings per share is as follows. Earnings attributable to ordinary shareholders. I've just done an abbreviation, and we're going to turn it onto a per share basis. So what does that mean? We must obviously divide it by number of shares issued. So do we have any of that information for pink? So let's have a look. Here we've got some information that relates to earnings. So the first one is here, earnings before interest and tax. And here's another one, earnings attributable to shareholders. So one of these is the correct one is the wrong one. Okay. It's not going to be the one before interest and tax, because a company is only allowed to start sharing profits with shareholders after all expenses have been paid. So that's why it needs to pay interest first and tax. What is left is earnings attributable to the shareholders. So that is the amount we'll use there. That's 2 million. Now, when it comes to the number of shares, have a look here. We've got two possibilities. We've got number of ordinary shares issued, and we've also got number of ordinary shares authorized. Once again, one is the right one is the wrong one. So you can only earn a profit on a share if the share's been issued, surely. So therefore, we must use this one and not this one. So a company is authorized to issue up to a maximum number of shares. Whether it chooses to issue them all at once or not doesn't matter. But if the share is not being issued, obviously it can't partake in the profits. So we're going to take the earnings of the 2,124 million, and we're going to divide by the 200,000 shares. And remember that we need to do that first before we can actually work out the dividend payout. So let's have a look here. There is my working for earnings per share. Notice how this one is expressed. Earnings is in terms of rand. Number of shares is a number. So this must be expressed as so many rand per share. In this case, 10 rand 62. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to put my dividend per share of 5 rand, and I'm going to divide it by 10 rand 62, turn it into a percentage. Let's just get a contrast color, and it's 47 and a little bit percent. We weren't required to work out for purple. But let's get back to number 3. The price earnings ratio, this time for purple. So first of all, what does it mean? How many dividend payouts must the investor get before they can recover the purchase of the share? So price earnings. Okay. What do you think the formula is going to sound like? Obviously, it's going to be share price. And what are we going to relate that to? As the name of the ratio tells us, share price over earnings per share. And this one will just be a number. It's a ratio. So let's have a look now for purple. Do we have the share price of purple? Make sure we're in the correct column. Yes. 20 Rand. Do we have the earnings per share? Unfortunately not, but no problem. We're going to simply use this formula again. Please, we can't use that 10 Rand 62 because that was for company pink. So we're going to have to recalculate EPS, but this time for purple. So we're going to use those earnings of 2.822 million. And how many ordinary shares are issued? 400,000. So we divide the 400,000 into all of the earnings, and that will give us over here, we'll look there, for purple, we have earnings per share of 7 Rand 6. Right, so now we're going to work out the PE ratio. So the share price of 20 Rand divided by 7 Rand 6. What you'll notice here is that there's a Rand at the top, a Rand at the bottom. They are going to cancel out and you just get left with a number, 2,83 in this case. So let's interpret. What does that mean? For every 1 Rand that you get back as a dividend, you've had to spend 2 Rand 83. Or if you flip it another way around, you could say that you need, let's say, 3 dividend payouts in order to recover the cost of the purchasing of a single share. Right. Now, let's look at the rest of the questions. Okay. We need to make a recommendation to management as to which company is the better one, and you must give some reasons. So this is why over here, we are given the values of the missing ratios. So just remember here, your test is only 50 minutes long. So we need to test as many things as possible. So it would not make sense to repeatedly test the same thing. So that's why they could maybe ask you to calculate ratios for one company, then they'd have to give you the others. So all I've done now is I've taken those ratios and I've inserted it into my table. So we were fine with dividend yield because we worked out for both. We did dividend payout for pink, which means that we must go and put in dividend payout for purple. We did PE for purple, so we must go and populate with pink. And that's all that I've done here. Right, so that's why I've gone and put in the 42.58%. And then for PE, we worked out for purple. We must go and insert for pink. Now what we need to do is make a choice. So what I want you to read up about in the textbook is the following. So if we were to make a comparison, earnings per share, remember this is talking profitability of the business. So for earnings per share, we're going to say that higher is better as it's more profitable. In the case of dividend yield, this is the return to an investor. Obviously, higher returns are better than lower. So we're going to say higher is better. Then if we're going to look at dividend payout ratio, just go again. Dividend payout ratio. This is looking at the portion of available profit that is paid out. So obviously, if a business pays out a higher percentage of its profits, it indicates that it is profitable enough to pay out the profits and that it doesn't need to retain too much. So we're going to say here that higher is better. And then it leaves us with one more, the price earnings ratio. Now this one is the only one that's different, because if you had a price earnings ratio, let's say of 10, and you had another one of 2, let's try and pick which would be the better one. In the case of 10, you need to get 10 dividends in order to recover the cost of your investment. In the case of 2, you only need 2 dividend payouts, so you recover your investment quicker. Okay. Or for every 1 rand of profit, you pay 2. Compared to every 1 rand of profit you get back, you're having to spend 10. So therefore, in the case of the PE ratio, lower is actually better. So on the basis of that, we're going to look at our table and we're going to see which is the better of the 2 companies, whether it's pink or purple. So I'm just going to select another color that we can see here. Let's go green. So on the basis of dividend yield, we are going to see what? That the higher one is the 16.67%. So based on that, simply we would go pink. Then with the dividend payout ratio, we see that pink is slightly higher than purple. So once again, we would recommend pink. Then in terms of PE, extremely similar. So that would not be what would change your decision, but slightly lower for pink. So pink gets the nod again. And there's actually a 4th one here that we can use because we had to work out earnings per share for both. So we're going to compare 10.62 versus 7.06 Rand. So obviously the higher EPS is the more profitable one. So on the basis of that, I think we conclude that we're going to choose which one? Pink. And you must clearly state your choice in your answer. And then I've just given some of the reasons which I've talked you through. So I think if you practice the work here and you understand this question, you should be doing a beautiful test for everybody on Wednesday. So thank you, everybody, for your time. I hope you found these 3 recordings helpful and that you've learned something from them. So thank you so much. I'm going to end the recording and see you next time ahead of test 2. Hopefully by then we'll be able to do a live session. So bye-bye for now.